Welcome back to another episode of Camp Time is Real Time. I'm your host, Sarah Lebrecq, and we are back. It feels like it's been a couple of weeks. I think that's because it has been. But we are back today with Maura Johnston. And this is a good pod. This is one that we recorded during camp, so we've got that camp vibe to it. It was awesome talking to Maura. So Maura's mom, Heather, was the ceramics counselor when I was a kid growing up. So she's a second generation counselor, which I think is really cool. It's a really cool perspective, which, you know, what's kind of great is that it's not even a unique perspective anymore because we've got more and more second generations coming. So we talked about that. We talked about her time at camp, and we talked about the green hats and that whole ceremony. And what was really, really cool about this is we spoke on maybe a Monday night, and the next morning as I was dropping my kids off, who do I see coming out from behind all the posts? And Maura's like, Sarah, look, they're all wearing their hats. And sure enough, all of the head counselors who had been there the requisite amount of time had their green hats on, and they did in fact have the green hat ceremony that day. So that was really pretty awesome. So I'm happy that I get to learn about it before it happened, and then that it was just the next day that she got her green hat. So that was awesome. So this is a great one. You're going to enjoy it. Bring you right back to summer. And now for some housekeeping. You guys, no one's emailing me anymore. It's just TikTok, and it's the Chinese government. So please just send me an email. Come on the pod. Or if you don't want to do that, head over to Instagram, slide into ye old DMs. What else? TikTok, camptime_realtime. We got the old YouTube channel also, youtube.com/camptimeisrealtime, ? But it's been fun. We've got some good stuff cooking for later on in the year. But until then, enjoy this one. One more thing about this podcast. More talk about traffic. You guys know my obsession with figuring out the logistics of it and how it works. I think I got it out of my system after this one, but you never know, frankly. So that's about it from me. And we'll see you back here next time. Bye.
Okay, I started as a tenderfoot.
Nice.
In 2005. We're doing the counselor hunt this year, so I just got my number in to carry 15 years, but that's not counting the COVID year. So
Okay.
I started when I was 5. I am now 20. So it's really been like, that's why COVID was so weird, because then it was, the first year of my life that I wasn't here.
Right.
At camp.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a long time. I was a first and second session camper my entire run through until Cheyenne. Then I was like, I gotta do third session. Like, I've never done it before. And I will, my ego, I always got people, oh, you just seem like you're all 3. And I was like, oh no, I'm only 1 and 2. That's so crazy. And I was pushing that agenda because I wanted that CIT spot.
Smart. Very smart. That's awesome. Were you, so why did people think that? Were you up at Sing, or were you like, why do you think that maybe was?
Yeah. I've always been like that. The very like cliche camp thing where it's like, oh, you can be yourself was very much that for me. In the early years, I have vivid memories just because I was really small. I was always the tiniest kid in the group, which again, ego boost, because then all the 15-year-old CITs want to be your little friend, because back then we could just sit on their laps and stuff. So I was always sitting on counselors' laps and like getting all the attention and just loving it. And then as I kind of aged through it, it was like, oh, you want to be the responsible person who's also fun. You want to be the responsible person and like the really fun, crazy person who's not getting sent to Tom's office. And so it's like, okay, now we walk that line for the next couple years.
Wow. Were you like cognizant of this in the moment? That's amazing.
Well, I don't think Cam has been on the pod yet.
Not yet.
Cam,
Next week.
I brought Cam to camp.
Oh.
Cam and I have been friends since the first day. He was my neighbor. I lived in Franklin till right before kindergarten, and then we moved to Norfolk.
Okay.
And Cam and I lived on the same street. So on the first day of kindergarten, we on the bus, we sat down next to each other, and it was like, and since then it's been pretty inseparable. And so when I'd already, been going to camp, I think either that summer before or whatever, and obviously, like my mom and everything was talking to, and I'm like, by Chippewa year, so we were probably like 8, I was like, you gotta come to camp, like it's gonna be great. And then he started going 3 sessions since then. So I brought the man here, and then he was a CIT, and then he left, and Sam texted me, now 2 years ago, and he was like, would Cam want to come back? And I was like, yeah, probably, I'll text him.
Oh my gosh.
So basically, long story short, like that was Cam is a crazy person, as you know. Sure. But we were joined at the hip, but I didn't get in trouble. Cam got in trouble. That's the middle ground. I knew when to stop.
Yep. Yeah.
And I knew when to calm it down. And, obviously none of that matters now because he's, we're both our own people and all that stuff. But there's that kind of, I was like, okay, I know I need to chill and I need to be fun and I need to do this, but I also 100% want to be myself and like not get in trouble and just kind of like listen, because that's what I liked to do, which sounds dorky, but I did. I was like, I want to I want to listen. I want to have fun.
Yeah. Like I like this place. I know that like one trip to Tom and that's it.
Exactly. I did not want to be that person. So, and I didn't, now that I think about it, nothing to worry about, because now that I know how crazy some of these kids can be, I'm like, I wasn't even close. It was fine. Mind my own business.
Yeah, but that's maybe why you're still here, right? So like it's one thing to like make the cut to be a CIT, and then it's another thing because like that's a big cut down from CITs to assistants.
My CIT year, our first year CITs, we started with 13. And it was like just like a lot of people. And then it was like, oh, we need to cut this down now to 4 assistants.
Yeah.
And they ended up cutting it down to only 6, which again, we were shocked. We were like, oh, they're cutting it down to 4. Like we got to be at our A game because we got to make 4.
Yeah.
And, I was lucky to do that. And now I'm still here.
I think it's a big deal because, it's the one thing of like, okay, good. Like I'm here, I'm a CIT. That's great. But like, it's almost like, I mean, it is like your first lesson in any job. It's like, okay, like how can I help who I'm working for? It's like, oh, wait, this isn't just for me, which if you listen to the pod, you know that was 100% our mindset back in the day. But yeah, you get there, you want one of those coveted spots and you have to be like, all right, well, like, how can I make the camp the best thing ever? And you did something right.
I remember that very vividly from the camper years, once getting like a little bit in that middle age, like Micmac kind of thing, where it's like, oh, I want to be a CIT. I'm going to be a CIT. Yeah. It was like, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And it's true. I mean, I feel like once you get to like the out of high school head counselors, there's a little bit of that, like, oh, do I want to move on? Right. Because of course that's like what crosses your mind, your summers and everything. But like, it's just like, I don't know. I really like being around kids. I like helping kids. I like just being around this group of people and doing my thing. And, I study film at school. So when Sam called me and was like, do you want to do video? I was like, if you'd asked me a couple years ago, do you want to do video? I would be like, no way. It is so much work.
Yeah.
It's hit or miss, whether people think you're funny or not. That's a lot of pressure. You could put out a video that everyone just thinks is nothing and it's bad, and that could happen. Right. It's so much work. And then you have to live up to Mike Cowell. No way. If you want to do it, I was like, yes, like 100%. I'm all in and I love it. So
nice. So is this your first year as a head counselor? Or
no, I was in ceramics last year.
Ceramics. Okay, cool. So what are the differences being the video counselor versus ceramics? Do you have a tribe or no?
I do not.
No.
The troop.
Yeah.
Last year I did have a troop. So yeah, last year was my first year as a head. I was the head of the Owls, formerly known as the Micmac Apache.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Group. And then I was in ceramics, which is what my mom was in back in the day. So it was kind of doing that little legacy, although as she's reminded me many times, I had way easier than her because I didn't have to pick up kiln in like the middle of the night, like clay for the kiln in the middle of the night, like the sketchiest places. She's like, Gail would just send me out. I was like 16. I was like,
what?
I don't have to do that. It's just there when I get there.
So for the listeners, so your mom is Heather Candelo is what
Heather Candela, now Heather Johnston.
Yeah.
She went to camp and then was head counselors. I think she was head counselor of like ceramics and in the head of the Cherokees for, Kelly's probably going to fact check me on this, but probably head counselor from like 90 to 95.
Right.
In that range. I know her last year was like 95 or 94.
Okay. Yeah.
But
and then, right. Yeah. She was one of the, for me, she was one of those like, oh, she's so cool. Like she was in that group of like very cool. I
understand it, how people can see that. Well, I mean, I love my mom. I think my mom's great, but then they're just like, when like Kelly and Eric tell me stories and stuff, I'm like, what are you talking about?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Or when they're like, oh yeah, we wouldn't let Sam hang out with us because he was younger and we were friends with Jesse and like those were the younger kids. And I'm like, Sam Cowell? What? Right. Exactly. You're all middle-aged to me. I don't understand.
All middle-aged, and yet we all find ourselves together all the time. Well, here I am lumping myself in, but you hang out with people like considerably older and considerably younger than you, and it's fine.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. And I remember that mattering much more when I was a CIT, because obviously you're looking up to these people.
Right.
And now I'm realizing I'm like, I was looking up to people that were 18 years old. Those are children.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now I see it when I hang out with plenty of the younger heads. So the ones that are like just graduated high school. And I'm like, oh, I'm older than you.
Right.
But it's just like, oh, we're hanging out. And then like, Mike and I get along really well. Last year we were the same age group, which was really, really helpful for me because it was my first year as a head. Like that's a lot of pressure, even if you grew up at camp and stuff. And I remember Mike said to me towards like the end of the summer, he was just like, kind of gave me like a full handshake. And I was like, oh, and he's like, you're doing great. And I was just like, that was awesome. Like, that felt really good in that moment. Just to be like, oh, I'm doing good.
Yeah. So what has it been like, just because you had certain expectations about video, like what has it been like being responsible for a video every session?
I mean, it's simultaneously so much work and so much more stressful than I thought it'd be, whilst actually being much less daunting than I thought it would be at the same time. Sure. Because it's like, I was nervous. Okay, now I'm not going to have a troop anymore. That's a very different thing. That's something I've never experienced because you go from CIT to assistant, and then I was a head last year. So now it's like, this is a whole separate wavelength of how you behave at camp and like what you're doing with your time. So on one hand, it's like, oh, I have all this free time during tribe time and everything. Like I don't have to do anything. And it's like, no, you're actually working.
Yeah. Yep.
But then at the same time, it's like, oh yeah, I got to get these videos in and make sure that they're on time. And that's so stressful, but it's just so rewarding at this, it's like, obviously I got Fink, who I usually refer to as Matt. And then the campers tell me, who is that? Blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Fink.
That's great.
Like we're the same age. We've known each other for like a really long time. I'm sorry. It's
like, that's funny.
He has a name.
Yeah.
We work really well together, and it's been a lot of fun, honestly, not having the troop. There's pros and cons. Like at the 50th, it's like this kind of like at the 50th sing, I should say.
Yep.
When everyone's going up and doing like their thing, I was like, it would have been really nice to do that, like to have the kids and to do that. Yeah. But then on the other hand, like they don't, head counselors of, if I was still in ceramics, don't get to make this really cool thing that everyone in the camp goes to watch at once. Or like even today during competitions, we did blind musical chairs, which is one of my personal faves. And although I was disappointed not to be in it, I got, I was like, oh, now I get to go up there and stand there and get really up in people's faces and get in on all the action. And it's like, oh, that's what, like, I really like doing that. So it's pros and cons. And Mike had told me, like that the thing he struggled with more was like, he's like, I wasn't really good at remembering campers' names because you only see them a couple times. Yeah. And the younger kids, you don't see it all. Now we see everyone who's out of junior camp comes video now.
Right.
Which is crazy. And so like, that's what I've taken like a lot of conscious effort into as well, where it's like, okay, if I'm not gonna see them a billion times and have these moments with them, then I'm gonna like make sure that I'm like hanging out at everyone's post and like chatting up
Nice.
every child that I see, just to be like, ha, you.
That's awesome. No, I was very curious your take on not having a troop, because that was always I just loved having a tribe. I just like there's something different about like having them as opposed to just like being in your area.
You get to know like every little kid's thing. And even now, like my former owls who are now bobcats with Colby,
Yeah.
that they come into video and I'm like, yes, and because I'm like, oh, these are my kids, and Fink's like, I don't know how to handle them because sometimes kids get rowdy, but I'm like, no, they're my kids,
right? Yeah,
and I'm like, no, I
exactly.
know exactly what to do. I know their moms because we chat. Like it's like that. I love interacting with adults. I've always loved it. I just think it's so fun. So I miss that part of it, but then like making sure that I can be that fun counselor. And also we do, Fink and I, and as well as Lily, the arts and crafts counselor, do upper play every day. We don't.
Oh, okay.
So during the first troop time, is the video slot for upper play, and then second troop time is Lily's, and then Fink and I switch off. So each of us does it every other day. And at first I was like, like upper play every day or every other day even is a lot. Rather than doing like once a session as an assistant. But I really like it because then you're just like hanging out with like, and usually it's the same crop of kids most of the time. And you talk and you play games with them. I know who likes to play Monopoly and I know who likes to play Legos, and we chat and it's great. I'm like, oh, this is what I like. So I kind of get that back a little bit.
That's awesome. Honestly, that seems like a good way to kind of scratch that itch.
Right.
Like, yeah. Oh, that's really great. Yeah, there's something about it's funny. My kids like just don't do free swim a lot. They're those kids kind of. And like Aiden will, when it's open, he's down at lower play, and Quinn's a tadpole, so she like they'll just sit on the side. And I'm like, what? But then I think back, I'm like, I was apparently one of those kids also that it's just like a hassle to like get into your bathing suit again. Like, I don't know.
I couldn't swim until I was like 8. And Kelly's like, yeah, I know you couldn't.
That is awesome though, that you do still get, I think it's very cool to hear that you're like consciously making an effort to get to know the kids, and you get that little bit at upper play. Like, how do you approach video, I guess? Like, do you have ideas? Are you writing scripts? Like, how do you structure your video?
Script is a strong word.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
There are haphazard psychotic notes that we write that are like, oh, gorilla this, and an arrow to Chippewa or chipmunk, whatever, and weird stuff. But when Sam had called me in, I want to say April, and told me, oh, we're gonna have you do video, I was like, oh, I'm so excited. And he said, okay, you're doing it with Fink. Like, do you need his number or anything? Maybe you guys can start chatting. And I was like, oh, I already have it. I've known Fink for a long time. I texted him and he was like, oh, I'm so excited. And we that day like opened up a Google Doc for like ideas, like back in April, that we have been like actively on like since April.
That's awesome.
And so when we came in for orientation, it was like, I know I want to do this, because we would text each other on the document. So like if you went into Getty, you'd see the edit from the other person, like, this is really funny, or this is not funny.
Yeah.
Which is equally as
also important. Yeah.
No, there's not writing scripts per se, but we write down like a basic idea. Some of them are total on the fly. But with those older kid groups, we do like to do like 3-act things. Like we like to do, oh, this is a beginning and a middle and an end. Even if the beginning is like saying hello and the end is saying goodbye, it's like we still need like a bookend for those older kids that want to do a full thing. And then with the younger ones, it's like, oh, you're gonna giggle into the camera and they think it's like the coolest thing ever. And like for them it is, and that also makes me happy, because the video room, when we watch the videos, is where all the junior campers are. So even if there's one thing where me and Fink are like, I think this one's a dud. Like, I think this part of the video is not that funny. It's not gonna get a lot of laughs. But as soon as like Mike pops on screen, Sam, whoever, the little kids are just like, ha, 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 ha.
Yeah, yep, yeah.
It's extremely validating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're learning that about camp writ large, right? It's
Yeah,
validating everywhere.
exactly.
The I don't is this still your experience? I doubt it is. So like way back when I worked there and everything and before too, with video, it was like if someone walked out with a video camera, it was like a magnet to the rest of the kids were like, whatever. And like, I think that's gone away now. Has it? Is it?
And that was part of like when I had said earlier, if you had asked me a couple years ago, I was just like, I think video honestly like is dying because the kids have them. They have phones, or if they don't have phones, they have their parents, they have iPads, they have whatever, they have YouTube, they have TikTok. Even back like if I started in 2005, I think is when YouTube started, or 2006.
Yeah.
So that was still the very even like early days. People were editing videos, of course, but like actually seeing other people's stuff was so new.
Yep.
And so then, Mike and everyone else from that like 2000s era really ran with that and was like making such funny internet humor. But now that because I wasn't allowed to necessarily, like just peruse YouTube on my own when I was a kid.
Good.
Now I'm not saying that kids are allowed to or whatever, but like either way, it's so much easier for them to even make this stuff by themselves.
Yeah.
Which on one hand is so cool. But on the other hand, it's like, well, they're not going to think I'm funny because I'm 20. I'm old. They're not, they can watch much funnier stuff that like their kids their age are making about Fortnite. So they're not going to think I'm funny at all. But then coming back to it, they're still just like so excited about like the idea of being able to film and like act and stuff. And even like breaking the kind of like fourth wall for them when they're like, well, we just filmed that, but isn't that going to go after something? We had to reshoot it. I'm like, no, I edited together in different
imagine
like
that.
I do say, oh, we'll finish it in post, and they're like, oh, what do you do that on? And like, we have a computer. And they lose it. Right. I mean, it's still cool no matter what, because if someone points a camera in your face, you're gonna want to make a silly face, and you're gonna, even if you're a shy kid, you're gonna want people to see you, and it's great.
Yeah.
I mean, you get the shy kids that still want to be on camera, and it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, also nothing cooler than at the video spotting yourself in the video, even if it's just like in the, during the music portion or whatever, like that's a big deal.
Well, yeah, this is kind of a backtrack almost, but I'm a film major now. Before that, probably when I was like an assistant looking at colleges and stuff like that, I was originally going to apply for or audition for musical theater and like acting and stuff like that, because I did that all through high school. I'm a singer, classically trained singer, all this stuff.
Excuse me.
I had thought about going down the performance route of it all.
Yeah.
And then I ended up, changing gears a bit, just kind of a bit.
Yeah.
But even at camp, that's when I was like, oh, like I want to act, like I want to do this. I want to. And then orientation day, Mike pulled me and Fink aside. He was like, guys, I'm so excited. He was like, because he told us two separate stories of like each other. He was like, Maura, we always knew that you were going to be someone who like, wanted to star in the videos and like could do it, which again, validating pat on the back, like, oh, we're giving you the lead when you're 11. And it's in some Mike had me eat a banana with a peel on. Fink, apparently, when he was a camper, was the kid who didn't really want to be on camera as much, but described himself as a behind the scenes guy. And then I was the total opposite, where I was like, I would like to have every speaking part and do the most ridiculous thing. And then afterwards, people would say, oh, you're the kid from that video. And I would say, yes, I am. And that's why we work so well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That kind of thing, because now I see that with kids coming in. I'm like, oh, you're an acting kid, like you're this. And the thing is, they honestly could be doing that, like in the future. Who knows?
That's right. And they get their big break at the session 2 FCDC video, and that's absolutely one of the coolest things about video is, so you like, I know you guys dug up the time capsule yesterday. But that's kind of what every video is from that year. And that's like the only thing. Like now, they've got Instagram. So there are a couple of videos on there, which I truly appreciate as a parent. But like you guys are documenting what the year was. And that's like truly the only keepsake that you can go back to. So it's like, it's kind of cool. You know, you're responsible for a deliverable, and it's like, all right, this is what 2022 was.
Oh
And
yeah. You see that when the kids watch when Fink and I are editing away in that kind of second week of the session, and our poor CIT has to watch like the same old video like 50 times. Well, we
nice.
did. Billy just gave us like a stack of all. He's like, "Oh, I need these back," but it's like dating back to 2015 that we can roll through. I'm like, "Oh, great!"
Right.
But watching it, it's like, "Oh, there's that person. There's baby this person," or "I remember when we did this competition and all this stuff," and it still like brings back that like excitement, even though like that's very recent past.
Yep.
And that's really what it is. It's like it's this little time capsule of stuff. And I know that Billy has like the old tapes and everything that are kind of sealed away nicely so they don't get damaged. And hopefully one day will be converted into something that we can watch.
Truly need to do that. Yeah.
But like it's just so cool to watch ones from when I was a camper and then had the kids now be like either, oh, here's, oh, who's that? And you get to say, oh, that this person's not here anymore or whatever, and then tell a story about them.
Yes.
Like, oh, who is that? And you're like, that's Tristan. They're like, no, it's not. Like, that is Tristan. Like, that is 13-year-old Tristan. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Like, and they lose it.
Yeah. No.
I lose it. I love it.
Yeah, no, you're so right. You're so right about that. And then you tell a story about the person. That's exactly it. And it's like,
I will die by the fact that camp is a place for nostalgic people. It's what brings me to film. Like it's the type of films that I love. It's why I want to do this for like a career. Like it's that sort of time, and nostalgia is something that is very integral to me in like my personality. I just love it. And those memories and stuff. And that is like the lifeblood of camp. I think every single person who sticks around camp for a while, it's because they're a nostalgic person.
Sure.
And then they find all the other nostalgic people that they grew up with or that they watched grow up or that watched them grow up and are now friends with. And you just bounce around the same stories like 50 times, but every time it's still great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so picture the reunion, for example, for someone, say like me, where like I've got, on the one hand, I've got all the counselors I idolized. And then on the other hand, I have all of the campers that grew up with me. It was just like, it was too much. It was too good.
So, I mean, I know it was really crazy for me to, Rachel Giddings, one of my like super close friends. Of course, her parents are always around camp.
Sure.
But then my mom was at this reunion and everyone's telling me stories about my mom, or it was just so weird being in the same room with her in the camp setting. We're like, we're equals in this sense. Like this is head counselors and former head counselors. It's like, yeah, but that's my mom. Yeah. And now it's people that grew up with my mom that were not me.
It's bananas. Yeah, you're like peers. Like you're at that party as peers.
It's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's insane. It also feels very normal because, like, I think of people that I look up to at camp that are also like quote unquote my equals, even though I don't feel that way.
Right.
But it's like, oh, like Ty and like all these other like head counselors that are much older than me that I grew up with. But like to kids, we're all 30. So like
right. Yeah. Really.
To the kids, I'm 30, I'm married, like they could be my kids, who knows? We're all the same age. So that to me, that just reads, oh, like they all see you the same way. You're all adults to them. And I'm like, oh, well, you're very, very wrong. Because
like what keeps you coming back to camp? Like did you know early on? I think you touched on it earlier, but like, are you just like, I can't picture my summers not being here, or like what are some of the things that keep you?
That COVID year was pretty legit, like in the sense where it's like, this is bizarre not being here. I found myself thinking I'm pretty close with all my camp friends outside of camp. We'll talk and stuff, but it is like very different than like spending like your whole day in this very like close-knit surroundings with them, because there's no secrets at camp. Like you're all friends, you're all know everything about each other, you're with the person, there's no shame when you're talking to someone, you just walk right up to them and start chatting about your day. It doesn't matter who it is.
Right.
And that energy can fade without camp. So it's like, okay, like is it going to be different when I see everyone the next year? I found myself thinking about like certain campers and I'm like, oh, I hope they're doing all right. Like I wonder what's going on in their life. Like I want to know. And it's like, oh no, I think I do really want to come back. I mean, that's the majority of it, there's this, because with the, everyone at camp knows you for exactly who you are, which is terrifying, but also very good. But for me, it's mostly just the kids. I feel very, very passionate, I guess, about that, which I didn't expect. But like the more years I keep going, the more like having these sorts of like real conversations with kids, or like learning about their lives outside of camp where they're like not, 100% themselves, is super, super like interesting for me. And it's a very like weird experience, but it also makes me think about like the counselors who were like that for me. Like when I was at camp, and it's like, oh yeah, I hope those people know how much they meant to me back then. And then if I can do that for someone else, like, awesome.
Yeah. And that's like kind of the lifeblood of camp, we've learned. So it's,
making memories and changing lives.
Exactly.
Like, pouring oatmeal on each other.
For example, I don't know if you know this, before Billy won the watermelon competition, I was the champion.
Oh, so what you're saying is you're going to come back,
I'll be back,
next week to eat, whatever disgusting mess of food becomes the final.
Just the watermelon. No, yeah, it was like 2 or 3 years. I was just like, I'm gonna win this. And then I did.
Watermelon was a good eating competition where they would have campers be in it back in the day, because it's harder to choke on watermelon. Although Billy did choke on it one year.
Yeah, you can choke on it if you eat it too fast. Yeah.
But when I want to say like Navajo age, so probably only like 10, I had been looking forward to watermelon all like year, regular school year. I was like, I want to be in watermelon. And then finally, the day came, Tom came over, and he's like, we're picking out campers to be in a challenge, in a competition. And I think because it was eating, he like told us what it was. Somehow, I don't know, maybe he did like one of those little Tom Cowell things where he's like, well, it might be red and have seeds. Wink, wink. Yeah. Somehow I knew it was watermelon, and I got picked. I was so happy. And then throughout the course of the day, it's gonna be like an hour, and I lost my tooth. So I couldn't do it because I lost my tooth that day, probably practicing eating watermelon for the final, and I lost it. But in my head, I was going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what you're saying is you're looking forward to redeeming yourself this year.
What I'm hearing is, I have never put myself, when I started as a CIT, everyone knew I had severe food allergies, and most people forget what those are. So they've never put me in eating competition, just in case. And honestly, as much as watermelon sounds like an absolute joy, I don't want to put myself up for saying I'll do eating competitions, and then Sam having me go and eat whatever, eggs or something. Ugh.
Well, that, or like you do the competition and then they're like, now it's time for the EpiPen. And
no, I think I would rather go into anaphylactic shock. I think that would be less embarrassing than losing it for the head counselors. I'm dead serious.
I mean, you go down in infamy.
If I choked in an eating competition, choked as in like did bad, not actually choked, I think that would be more humiliating than having a major allergic reaction and being unable to finish.
It's a debate we can have. Maybe.
I did food relay one year, but that was when I was used to be allergic to milk. So when the whipped cream at the end, I wasn't allowed to, I did the whole thing, but I had to be the person to do the whipped cream because I wasn't allowed to touch it, but I didn't know how to do it because I had never done it before because I was allergic. And everyone was yelling at me. And I was like, I don't know what to do.
Oh no.
I was like 13.
Yeah.
I was like,
oh no.
It's fine, Blue still won that year. It's all right.
There you go.
I did blind chairs one year, which we did today, which I was really looking for. I was like, oh, maybe I'll be in this one because I really like that one. I came second the year that I did it. And again, big pride there for that. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll be in it again this year. I wasn't. That's okay. I did hula hooping this year, which is new and which was like, kind of a one-off short thing.
Yeah.
But
I heard you absolutely crushed it.
Mm-hmm. Perfect score, only person with a perfect score. And I was next to John Saig and Mike, who can't hula hoop. So that was also really funny. one of those things where I was like, heads, like we came in last, like complete last, even though I got a perfect score because the grown men next to me couldn't hula hoop. Yeah. And I didn't even care because I was like, that's so funny.
Right.
Watching to do it was funny. I didn't care. The assistants needed to win. Let them have it. This I've been waiting very much so. As the other people my age group are for green hat ceremony to occur. We were kind of waiting on it. It's when you're a head counselor for 3 years if you didn't grow up at camp. 2 years as a head counselor. If you grew up at camp, you get the green hat, the coveted green hat. And I remember looking forward to that, like as PIT, when there's no, indication that you're even going to make it that far, like to be ahead. But it was like, oh, like I want to do this at least till I get that. Like that's like a big goal because that's when you've cemented yourself in as like I was a head counselor here.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
I want it. I want it really bad. And it's a bunch of us that are that age. It's the people a year above me because of COVID. Like they started the same year that I did as a head, and the kids, the people a year below me are also the same boat there, just with how COVID worked out and like where people were needed. So there's like a big group of us that are all same year. It's our second year as a head counselor. And so every single day that someone comes in wearing that hat, the people who have them were like, oh, be on the lookout for if everyone else is wearing them, because then you know what's going to happen today. Because sometimes it's just like two counselors like happen to just be wearing the hat. It's like, do you think it's going to happen today? Like, I don't know. Molly never wears that hat. So like, maybe like it must be happening. And then it doesn't.
So what are they, hold on. So how does that happen? People come in and like, does everyone else know it's going to happen? Or
I haven't been let in on the secret because I don't have a hat.
Okay.
I know they all bring it because then they like take a picture and everything. And I know like from years past, just seeing it happen, like they'll all either be people who already have the hat will be wearing it like on the day, or they'll bring it with them to put on at sing. So I know for a fact, and I'm sure some people are going to be like, no, Maura's lie. Like they can't be that into it. Me and Fink talk about this because we're like, we see someone wearing this hat and we're like, is it today? And especially as video counselor, this happened, today, week 5. As video counselors, sometimes we're working like through the sing if we're really doing stuff like, oh, we're getting stuff over. And so it's like, oh, I was like, okay, I'm going to head to sing. Like, Fink, you going to come? He's like, yeah, I'm doing stuff right now. I'll come a little later. But I was like, it's week 5. Like, what if they do our green hats and you're not there? And then he was like, oh yeah. So he got up and came with me to sing.
That's awesome.
Because it's like, yeah, you got to be there. You got to be ready for it.
That's so cool.
Hats are very important at FCDC because then like Kelly and some of those like really big heads have even more specialized hats for their like over 20 years and they're over 30 years. And it's a very big hat culture here. Shirts are one thing, but hats, that's the big one.
You've arrived. That's really cool. Oh, I truly, this is like breaking news to me. That's really cool that it's like something you guys are looking forward to, know is going to happen at some point, and then all of the other people with green hats will also know. Because that's awesome. What a cool spectacle too. And it's usually sing.
Yeah, they'll do a whole big thing. Sam does like he does like a speech. Like everyone gets a little bit. He introduces you, like he doesn't introduce your name first and like call you all up. He starts like, oh, this person, and like tells like a little bit about the person. And you're like, oh, this has gotta be so and so. And then he'll call you up and they'll put the hat on your head.
That's amazing.
It's quite the spectacle, as it should, honestly, as it should be. 2 years doesn't sound like a long time, but anyone who's been a head counselor for at least 2 years knows that it's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of content that's happening in those 2 years.
I want to make sure that you guys are both video counselors. I want to make sure someone films that.
Oh yeah. Someone's always, usually when I have to do something or Fink has to do something, Freddie's like, can I have a camera? And then I come back and there's like a ton of videos on there of him being like, yeah.
Sounds right. All of that sounds perfect.
And he's like, he's 6'5", so like it'll be the tops of people's heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, he's like, oh, I can get this angle. I'm 5'2".
Right.
So he's like, oh, I can get this angle for you if you want. I'm like, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Oh man, that is so cool. Oh, I hope it happens soon.
sister Mallory, shout out.
Yeah.
Assistant counselor.
So good at traffic. So
Oh,
good.
The girls,
the girls are killing it down there.
Yes, the girls are killing it. She loves traffic. She was nervous. Sam called her or texted her, and I think he texted her because then she came over. She's like, Maura, Sam's texting me. What do I do? And I was like, answer. I was
here. Yeah.
She's like, he wants me to do traffic. What do I say? And I was like, yeah.
Yes. You say yes.
You get for money, more responsibility. You prove you can do something. Like, always do it. But I think she was just nervous, like, because what if there's a car accident on my watch, a 3-mile-an-hour car accident.
Yeah, there won't be. She's so good.
And day one, she was, I love it.
That's awesome.
Power, I guess. But she didn't come last year. She'd come before COVID, and last year she took a summer off. She's the varsity hockey goalie for KP. Shout out KP. She's awesome, but she was doing a lot of summer hockey. And then this year she was just like, Maura, I think I kind of want to come back, but like I didn't do it last year. And that would have been, she went from 2 years as a CIT, and this is her first year as an assistant, technically, even though she's 17, she's one of the oldest assistants.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay. Being that way, we're like COVID and all this stuff. Like, so she's like, I don't know. And also, I don't know if they'll take me because I took those years off. And I texted Sam and I was like, do you need assistance? Mallory wants to do it. And he was like, yeah. He was like, send me your number. Like, let's figure it out.
That's awesome.
It's so great having her, back here. And
that's awesome.
It's definitely crazy. And it's so funny to share now with her, because she is, she's 17, she's going to her senior year of high school. So then, like we were saying, when you're hanging out with people younger and older than you, now when like you're hanging out with people, she's hanging out in my group because she's not CIT anymore,
right?
The heads and the assistants mingle pretty well, and I'm like, oh, like it's my little sister.
Yep.
But then it's the same thing with the DiBiaseos, the same things with like the Giddings in the past. It's everybody. It's like, you're all just hanging out. And
yeah,
it's also the idea that she's everybody's there's little sister too.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love camp.
Me too.
Yeah. Everyone I talk to who has even like a tangential relationship with traffic, I'm like, tell me about it, because I don't understand it.
Oh my God, it's so stressful.
Right. But me
walking through it stresses me out.
They do a great job. Apparently there has never been an accident. So
yes, nothing major.
Knock on wood.
It was big game. I mean, like, even the CITs like, I heard you going on the pod, and I was like, how did you hear? I'm like, your son is spreading rumors about me, and that the CITs are getting to about my appearances on the internet.
Yeah. Well, tell the CITs, I think you guys need to start listening, because I can tell if you're not. But some of them really, I mean, all of them great, but like, especially, the Pansiacos being on here and the Giddings and everyone, it's always good. And the John tribute, like all that stuff, anything with those memories is always just such a good vibe. Yeah.
Put on while I'm doing stuff. It's always great to just, like I said, some of them stories I've already heard like 50 times, and I'm still like,
yeah. Yeah, exactly.